Bum, 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 bum. Oh, you
Roar!
did hear the music. Oh, never mind. All right, whatever. Welcome to Pride of Detroit's preview podcast, First Bite. My name's Jeremy Reisman. I'm the editor in chief. This is definitely not the second time we're doing this. I am back from LA. Not going to say anything awkward about it this time. Happy to be back. Happy to preview Week 8 with the Philadelphia Eagles on tap. But with me to help preview, as always, my co-host for First Bite, Ryan Matthews at Ryan_POD. How we doing, Ryan?
I'm doing well. I'm glad you made it back in one piece from your pilgrimage, we'll call it,
There you go.
to
Appreciate
go
that.
see Matthew Stafford. Now we can turn now we can do a little Bob Seger and we can turn the page, right, Jeremy?
I know he's from Detroit, but you just like it still baffles my mind that you're a Bob Seger head. Like that does not fit you at all.
Oh man, that is where you will find myself and the Boomers in
Yeah.
the same part of the Venn diagram. That's where we exist. But
Speaking of boomers, we have a great guest for. He's not a boomer, but our good friend of mine. I know in person. He's a great writer for the Eagles at Bleeding Green Nation. It's Brandon Lee Gowden at Brandon Gowden on Twitter. Brandon, thanks for coming back, bud.
Happy to be here. Just turned 30. Pretty sure I'm younger than you, but apparently a boomer. I will say Night Moves by Bob Seger. Love that song. So there you go.
who doesn't, man? What a great tune.
Oh yeah, look, I am the oldest of you three. I should be the one that likes Bob Seger, but I don't. And it's weird to me that both of you do. But let's move on from Bob Seger. Let's talk about this fantastic matchup between a 2-5 and 0-7 team.
Are you sure you don't want to talk about Bob Seger?
I mean, they're both as much of a train wreck to me, in my
Oh
opinion.
my god.
Let's talk about the Eagles here because they are at least an interesting team, and I think maybe some people would say the same with the Lions. And as always, I want to start with the offense a little bit, and I have not been able to watch a lot of Jalen Hurts, so tell me everything about Jalen Hurts, Brandon.
Well, you're fortunate then. No, Jalen Hurts has not been, I would say, an unmitigated disaster for the Eagles. But I think it's very clear that they drafted this guy to be a backup, which was dumb when he used the number 53 overall pick when you already have a starting quarterback on a backup. And I think he's just unlimited talent at the end of the day. Like there's some positive flashes here and there. Obviously, he's a player with mobility, but he doesn't really have that arm that you see from a lot of the league's better starters. And he honestly just leaves too many plays out there on the field where he's not seeing the field properly. There's a play to make, and he's either not finding the guy or he's just not throwing the ball with accuracy. That was a big issue last year. Like ranked like dead last and like on target throw percentage and like good throw percentage. All that he led the league in like bad throw percentage by that's charted. Those sound like fake stats. They're actually charted by Pro Football Reference. If you didn't know, I just think it's very clear that he doesn't look anything like a franchise quarterback so far.
Well, you take a look at the rest of the Eagles offense, Brandon, and it seems almost kind of eerily reminiscent of the Lions offense in a sense. And like by DVOA metrics, they can run the football. Like they're the 8th best rushing team in the NFL. I mean, you take raw stats, they're averaging like 5 yards a carry. But they're 2-5. And is it just one of those things where the Eagles find themselves having to abandon the run game and lean on Jalen Hurts just because they find themselves in these pits that they have to climb themselves out of?
Well, they haven't always had to do it, but they just do it anyway. They just like they stop running the ball or they just don't run the ball, which has been a big problem. And like, look, I'm not like Mr. Like, you got to run the ball, you got to establish the run and do all that. I'm not trying to be like the boomer that I am and say all of those things, but like they take it to the extreme of just not running the football when it's one of their biggest strengths. And that is just doesn't make a ton of sense. And we saw it kind of work against the Raiders in the first drive last week when the Eagles went down and had a great drive. But then Miles Sanders got hurt and the game kind of get out of control. Kenny Gainwell fumbled. So the defense couldn't get a stop, as you see from 31 at the 34 on the stat sheet for Derek Carr there. So they can run the ball in theory, but again, Miles Sanders not going to be able to play this week. It looks like he missed practice both on Wednesday and Thursday. So I don't expect them to necessarily lean on that heavily here. In theory, they can, but they won't.
Well, you led right into my next question, which is, it looks like no Miles Sanders. So tell me about Kenny Gainwell. I know last week was probably the most you saw of him, and a fumble kind of highlighted his day, but looks like there's some positives there too.
He's like a good so when the Eagles drafted him, everyone's like, oh, Naheem Hines, because Nick Sirianni came from Indianapolis, and like he's like that kind of player, a running back who can catch out of the backfield. And I think he's a nice kind of compliment, like a role player here, but he's not a guy who's going to be a volume runner at all. So and you'll see more volume presumably with Miles Sanders out. I think the Eagles actually might call up Jordan Howard. I'm sure you guys are familiar with once upon a time. On their practice squad. They could call him up. And then they have Boston Scott as well. Boston Scott kind of not exactly the same player as Kenny Gainwell, but sort of in that mold as not necessarily a volume runner, but someone who can kind of catch the ball and be this pass catching running back. So I kind of expect they're just going to split the carries to some extent between those guys. But really, I don't know if the run is the best way to attack the Lions defense, kind of looking at their numbers, where in theory, the pass should be more vulnerable. But with that said, like the Eagles have had some of these matchups where the cornerbacks have been really bad. I'm looking at like the 49ers game when they had like Josh Norman out there, and some of these other teams they faced with like pass defenses that weren't good, and they couldn't really capitalize on that.
Well, I mean, again, you've done a phenomenal job of leading into where I want to take our discussion, and it's the Philadelphia passing game, because while you talked a little bit about Jalen Hurts and how he's limited as a passer in terms of being able to make some of those throws that you see other quarterbacks make, he has some weapons there. I mean, it's not for a shortage of weapons. I mean, drafting Devonta Smith. Now they've finally moved on from Zach Ertz, and Dallas Goedert is one of those guys at tight end who can be a big factor in the receiving game. As far as their receiving threats go, where do you see the hierarchy? Where do you see the production coming? I mean, let's not forget about Jalen Reagor, who's a guy who still has a lot of. I mean, he has a lot of something to him. It's just, will he realize that potential, right?
Yeah. I'm definitely not a Reagor guy, so I am going to.
I know you aren't. I know you aren't.
So, but now someone you didn't mention and who is really good, and unfortunately the Eagles forget, is Quez Watkins. Quez Watkins is a big play threat, and I believe they didn't get the ball to him till like fourth quarter or late in the game last week against the Raiders. So like sometimes this passing game just doesn't make sense, because it's like Quez Watkins has looked honestly even better than Devontae Smith. I'm higher on Devontae Smith, long term than I am Quez Watkins, but like this year, Quez Watkins has looked really good, and for whatever reason, Jalen Reagor is still getting more playing time than him, and they're not really even forcing the ball or force feeding the ball in a good way to Quez Watkins or even Devontae. I mean, Devontae has seen a good amount of targets here, but like I would love to just see like a drive or two where you're just keep throwing at it. Like just why go away from it? Like, don't try to out scheme the opponent. Just like keep going to what works. Now, part of the problem here, especially against the Raiders last week, is like Devontae Smith will be open on a slant, and Jalen Reagor, or sorry, not Jalen Reagor this time, Jalen Hurts is like throwing to his feet, or he's throwing behind him. Like the accuracy just hasn't been there. So that's frustrating. You mentioned Dallas Goedert. I think he is, their best weapon. He was like one of the very few players who had a good game against the Raiders last week. He's going to be good for some chunk plays here and there. But it's weird because Jalen Hurts isn't really like a guy who throws over the middle of the field at all. He actually ranks dead last in the NFL and throws over the middle of the field. So that's always kind of like a weird thing with the tight ends. It's not like you're going to just like, funnel the offense through him. So they have some pieces in theory, but the coaching isn't there and the consistency isn't there. So it's just not a great offense.
Well, I think just as a quick aside to that, like looking at, snap counts and alignment and things like that, like Quez seems like this guy who is their default de facto like slot guy. And it kind of surprises me that a guy like Hurts, who might struggle throwing outside the numbers and things like that, that he can't get the ball more to Watkins. So is that like part of the frustration about this offense? Is like, this is a guy who seems like he can make big plays. Why can't we get him more, a part of the game plan?
Yeah, it is. Again, I think it comes back to like trying to overthink it for some reason, like where don't worry about trying to like outsmart the opponent always. Like have this. So the bigger problem what I'm speaking to here is the Eagles offense doesn't have an identity. Like they don't have anything they can hang their hat on, anything you can point to and being like, this is who we are. Like just for an example, and this is obviously at a much higher level, but like the Ravens, what they are. Like, what the Ravens are. They're not going to try to trick you week in, week out. They have Lamar Jackson. They have a running game. They're going to do what they do. The Eagles very much do not have that at all. And you ask Nick Sirianni, you ask Jalen Hurts, you ask anyone, like, what's the identity? And they don't have an answer for you because there isn't one. So that's the thing. Like, nothing is fluid and makes sense, and there's coordination. It's very much a coaching staff with a lot of inexperienced coaches on it, starting with Nick Sirianni, at the top, who had never called plays before on a full-time basis before this year. And I feel like you're kind of seeing the results of that inexperience, and not just inexperience, but maybe just a bad coach.
It's interesting because, I mean, there are kind of a lot of moving parts, right? Like, they basically overhauled their entire wide receiving core. You move on from Zach Ertz and all that. So I don't get the sense from you, but is like the line that they're feeding people, like, this is just everyone's still getting used to each other at this point?
Can I have you rephrase that?
Yeah, I mean, just like with all the moving parts, is the company line right now that the chemistry just isn't there yet because there are so many new pieces to the puzzle here?
I guess I don't even know. There's no good explanation. They don't have any good answers for this, or even like fake answers they can say. It's across the board, really. That's what's kind of frustrating about it. It's not like, hey, our slot receiver is really bad, so we just get a new slot receiver and that fixes everything. It's not like one quick fix. I think it's like the coaching is bad, and honestly, it's kind of to a point of like where you kind of like, I think a lot of people are like, is it the quarterback? Is it the head coach? I think it's both. I think more than one thing can be true, but it can be hard to tell. Like, okay. Like, it's easy. I think that it's easy for coaches in general to get more of the blame and being like, oh, the coach didn't, put him in the right positions to succeed. But like, okay, I agree with that some of the time. But then again, I look back and you watch all 22 and they're like open receivers and Jalen Hurts has a clean pocket and he's throwing to him and the throw is coming out late or behind or whatever. And it's just like, he's just not making throws that are there to be made and aren't like, you're not asking him to make like an elite level throw. It's just like a basic routine kind of throw and he's just leaving it out there. So I think there are issues across the board with all of that, with talent, with coaching. It's just kind of a mess and they're out of sync.
To me, it's interesting to see, and I think this is going to be a common theme, especially, since coaching seems to be such an issue right now with Philly, is it's going to test the limits of like how bad they are, because this seems like such a good matchup. I mean, we just talked about how many weapons they potentially have in the pass game. Meanwhile, on the Lions side, they're missing their two starting cornerbacks who are both undrafted rookies, so they're already in a bad spot there. They might be missing both in this game, which means they might start a third undrafted rookie in Mark Gilbert, who has just been with the team for 2 weeks, previously on the Steelers practice squad. Sounds like he's going to get some time. Not sure about Jerry Jacobs yet, who's really been their best corner all season. He was out with an illness today. Don't know what exactly that is, but apparently not COVID, which is good because the special teams coordinator does have COVID. But yeah, I'm wondering how that matchup that clearly seems to favor the Eagles on paper really manifests itself, because if the quarterback's struggling, if the coach is unwilling to, utilize these big matchups in his favor, I guess if it can't work this week, when is it ever going to work? Is that kind of how they're feeling on the Eagles side?
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. That's why I just, like, on paper, you're right. Like, the cornerbacks are weak here, and the Eagles, like Jalen Hurts, even for his struggles, like in the passing game, should still, be able to do enough, to make this game winnable. But this offense kind of just like dries up sometimes in a big way, and that happened. Like I said, they had the nice opening touchdown drive against the Raiders, but then after that, it's just like nothing. And they got to the red zone the one time, and then they fumbled, and it was like a weird play where the right guard actually somehow got his hand on the shotgun snap as it was going back to Jalen Hurts. It's still catchable for Jalen Hurts, but he did not make that catch. I mean, to kind of give you some more context here about the Eagles' offensive inefficiency, I believe it's like 7 of their 18 touchdowns have been scored when the team has been like down at some point by like starting from when they were down at least 19 in the second half. Like, they're scoring a lot in garbage time, and it's really frustrating because it's like, this isn't reflecting the reality of the game. It's like the scores are looking closer than they really are, because the offense comes alive when like the game is already decided and nothing matters. This happened against the Bucks. This happened last week against the Raiders. So I would watch out for that. I would say be on stand or look out for, if the Lions somehow get up to a lead and the game is already decided, well, the Eagles are going to storm back and put up a bunch of garbage time points.
Spider-Man pointing me.
Spider-Man,
Let's
yeah.
do it. Yeah. This is it, man.
It's funny, yeah, because the Lions, really quick, the Lions haven't scored more than 19 points since week 1, and all of those points, they had 17, I think, at the 2-minute warning in week 1. So garbage time. So yeah, we can relate.
Yeah, we can relate. And then I guess something that I've noticed about the Eagles too, to kind of wrap up our conversation about their offense, is lost time along the offensive line. Losing Isaac Seumalo for the season at guard, having Landon Dickerson kind of move in there and shift in, and you have a rookie getting significant playing time. You have Lane Johnson, who sits out for a few games due to some mental health issues that he's taking care of. What has Jason Kels just been the only like rock solid guy who's been there like all season long that the Eagles have been able to count on? Or what is going on with their offensive line?
I love how you went with the purported technical pronunciation of Kelsey, which is Kels. Although Jason Kelsey will say it doesn't matter, but he'll say otherwise. But the offensive line in theory is supposed to be like the strength for the Eagles, and that's kind of why I felt like they had a chance against the Raiders last week, even though I thought I'd pick the Raiders to win, but I was like, maybe I'm sleeping on the Eagles a little too much. But no, I mean, it was a bigger issue than I expected. Like Jordan Mailata, who got this big contract extension and I thought had a really good summer and earned the starting left tackle job over Andre Dillard. Like, he's been hurt. Like, he's wearing this really big brace on his knee, I believe his right knee. And I think that's kind of been limiting him because he's giving up a lot more pressure and sacks than you would expect. And he's also had to flip between left tackle and right tackle because, as you mentioned, Lane Johnson was out. So I don't think that's helped them either in terms of mastering the footwork.
Spider-Man pointing meme again.
Yeah. A certain first round pick, right?
Yes,
yeah. So it's I don't think it's been quite as dominant, as it should be, as you want it to be ideally on paper. Jeff Stoutland, the Eagles offensive line coach, typically finds a way to make the most of a bad situation, makes chicken salad out of chicken,
Shit.
So I think overall, it's been solid, and you can't I don't think anyone would point to the offensive line as why Jalen Hurts is struggling. It's not that case. They've been fine. They haven't been elite, I would say, but they haven't been debilitating the team.
That's interesting to hear because I haven't watched a lot of Eagles film this year, but you look at some of the basic stats or analytic stats, which have their strengths and weaknesses. PFF has them in the top 10 in both pass blocking and run blocking.
Yep.
ESPN's got them in the top 10 in pass block win rate and run block win rate. So from the outside in, it seems like they're doing pretty good given all the shuffling parts. But yeah, I think, when you have eyes close to the team, maybe those stats can be a little misleading. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, maybe I'm they're not an issue. Yeah. I would clearly, and I would say they're above average, but I just, they're not they're not just going out and dominating. And then, part of that, you lose Sumalo. You have Landon Dickerson, who is not only a rookie, but he's also been banged up. And like you said, he's been between positions too and everything. And then, Lane Johnson was missing. So, there has been some issues. It's not perfect, but it's above average offensive line for sure.
It should be a good matchup. That's, I think, one of the few matchups in this game that might be strength for strength. Not that the Lions' offensive line or defensive line is a huge strength, but they're not bad either. I would say they're probably about average. So, a part of the game that might actually be fun to watch.
What an endorsement.
And with that, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the Lions' offense and the Eagles' defense, which is ugly versus ugly, and I can't wait to talk about it. So stick around here on First Bite. We'll be right back with Brandon Lee Gowton. All right, let's take a quick break here. Someone named Alex Reno says hi to you, Brandon.
Never heard of him.
I was going to say, do you know this fool?
Our good friend Bearded Blevins dropped an 18-month subscription to Such an Easy Win Sunday. Go Lions.
Can we pause for a moment real quick on I don't if something that former Pride of Detroit employee, Mansour Shaheen.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where he got it from, but the Detroit Lions were 18th in a power ranking somewhere.
Oh yeah. No, we wrote a whole thing on it, Ryan. No worries. You don't read the site.
I don't have to.
It was Sports Illustrated, right?
Yeah, it was Sports Illustrated MMQB. I think it was Connor Orr, maybe.
I mean, that's just not true. It's just not. I mean, that's a little much. It's someone trying to make a point and probably trying to get picked up by sucker sites like us who will write about it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I listen, I'm not hiding away from it. It's catnip for people.
Content, baby.
Exactly. Yeah, it was Connor Orr. And here I'll read
Oh.
what he wrote in a second here if my internet decides to be okay.
Just a good old Dan Campbell rub, right?
Yeah. He says, quote, "How can you put a winless team number 18 in the power rankings? Define power for me. If I'm a player, I'm calling my agent and telling him or her to get me on a plane to Michigan so I can bite some kneecaps." Bet you didn't see that one coming. Onside kicks, wildly honest press conferences, and an egalitarian brotherhood. That's power. Dan Campbell for the win.
I don't know. I think kudos enough to say, like, what does power mean?
Webster's dictionary defines power as...
I would have found that person, and I would have changed their high school transcript.
Lion Ninja, thank you for the 6 months. And our good friend Conan Eyes with the 12 months, a full year. Hey, anyone from Michigan here? Haha. Wyoming, Michigan, myself. I didn't even know that was a city in Michigan. Do you know where Wyoming is?
Yes, I do, and it has something to do with you not being a Bob Seger fan.
What?
Okay, you don't know where Wyoming, Michigan is. You're such a Cali boy.
I knew that was coming. Like I don't like Coney dogs.
Do you even like the Red Wings, bro?
How dare you?
You don't like Red Wings either?
No, I like the Red Wings. All right, let me look at where Wyoming is. Oh, it's right by Grand Rapids. See, I never make it to the west side. I wanted though.
The only time he makes it to the west side is when it's the freaking continent.
Got him.
Fried his ass.
By the way, Conan Eyes, who, if you don't know, is a Fortnite streamer with a glorious mustache. I will be joining you once again in mustachioed living in the month of November.
I was gonna say, are you plugging something right now?
I think I'm gonna save it till the end to talk about
Okay.
Movember, but there's a lot to talk about. I don't know how much I'm willing to spill the beans now, but it's gonna be a very good month. That's all I'll say. And then
I'd be calling you out as a fake Michigander, by the way.
She's leaving Michigan. What is she can't talk shit. She's leaving Michigan for Boston, of all places.
East Coast, baby.
East Coast, Beast Coast.
That's what they say.
I don't know. I don't think they say that.
No one says that.
No one says that. Captain James Herc, thank you for gifting a sub to Sweat 650 G-Town. Don't know what that means. Made me a little uncomfortable saying it.
Sounds erotic.
I agree.
20 bits from Derek Boberick says, how much for handlebars? I don't know if I can pull off the handlebars. I kind of tried last year, and I don't know.
Kind of either have it or you don't, right?
Yeah. Like, see, even like I don't know, like mine doesn't do a whole great job connecting here.
Mine doesn't connect at all.
Yeah.
Are you going to do anything special with your facial hair, Ryan?
Yeah, I don't mind doing it because I'm married, so
yeah,
I mean, she's
you're locked
stuck.
in now. You timed
Nothing
it
to lose.
perfectly.
Yeah, she's stuck. So so there's that, and then also like I wear a mask for the majority of the day while I'm at work, so nobody sees it.
That's kind of how I feel, though. I'm going to be at pressers now with a mustache, which is going to be a first because last year I got to do it all virtually, and even though they saw it virtually, it's a little different.
Deuce will love it.
Deuce will love it again.
We'll remember you.
See, yeah, that's the thing. I don't think he came. Did he come on our show a second time? I think he did, right?
Just the one time.
Okay.
Yeah.
But like when I showed up in person, he wasn't like, "What happened to the mustache?" He was just like, "Oh, here's a guy." I'm curious if he'll recognize me with the mustache. Not that he doesn't see me every Thursday, anyways. Either way, yeah, there's a lot of fun things we'll be doing, raising a lot of money for good causes and some prizes of which I might show you when we're done with this podcast. Okay, I think we're ready to get back into it.
Let's do it.
Jamal did visit twice. That's true. And welcome back to First Bite, our Lions preview podcast. It's week 8. Lions, Eagles. We're here with Brandon Lee Gowden of Bleeding Green Nation. let's get to the Eagles defense because people seem a little upset, Brandon. People seem to be calling out the defensive coordinator's job already. I know the staff got completely overturned on that side of the ball this year. I was about to ask you what's going wrong, but maybe I should rather ask you what's going right on that side of the ball.
I'd rather answer the first question, to be honest.
Fine. What's going wrong? Besides Fletcher Cox hating your own coach.
Yeah, well, I think now, to be clear here, I think Fletcher Cox has a point, but I also think Fletcher Cox isn't playing well on his own. So, okay. And I think a little bit, again, it always comes back to more than one thing can be true.
Yeah.
But to kind of speak to the ineptitude of the Eagles defense, over the last 5 games, they have given up 32.4 points per game. Only one team has given up more. That is the New York Football Jets, who are at 32.8. So 0.4 difference there. You look at the box score from last week, you see the fact that Derek Carr completed 31 of 34 passes, which is just insane. And this isn't like an accident. Like, this happens because the Eagles believe in disallowing the big play, which, to their credit, they have done a good job of. I think they rank like 3rd best in not giving up the big play. The problem is when you kind of just don't give up the big play at every expense and you play super far off, it turns out you can kind of give up a lot of the underneath plays. And the Eagles actually allow an NFL high 79.6% of throws under 20 yards to be completed. So nearly 80, not really good. And I think it just kind of comes from a standpoint of like the players too. You're getting demoralized because you're playing the style of defense that isn't like attacking and aggressive and you get a big play and you're fired up. It's like you're just sitting back and the other team is taking what they want. You're sitting back, the other team is taking what they want. And at some point, you're going to see players get frustrated like Fletcher Cox did, like Rodney McLeod did. One more stat for you on this defense. The NFL record for completion percentage in a single season was set by Drew Brees in 2018. It's 74.4%. The Eagles this year are allowing quarterbacks to complete 74.4% of their passes. It's terrible.
Well, Ryan, I saw you rubbing your hands together, and I have to imagine Jared Goff listening to this because we all know he does listen to this. Must kind of love what he just heard, right?
He's got to be thinking about how many times he can complete the ball to DeAndre Swift behind the line of scrimmage and let him do the rest of the job. Like, he's like, man, this is going to be great. This is going to be a feather in my cap. I want to ask you a kind of like off the road question, because this is something that I just noticed looking at Pro Football Reference. But the Eagles are 2nd in the NFL in penalties on their defense, and they are 1st in yardage. Has that been a huge problem with this defense in terms of like maybe getting in situations where, you know, they might be able to get a stop, but a penalty is a backbreaker for a drive and just leads to points?
So earlier on in the season, that was like penalties were like a super big issue. They were like, not only are they leading the league, they were like leading the league like comfortably. And that's actually one of the few positives the team has been able to actually point to in the past couple of weeks. Like they've cut it down. I think they actually cited like both, and I heard Nick Sirianni and your boy Jason Kels say that in the recent weeks, like they've actually been one of the least penalized teams. So I think they've cut down on that. They kind of fixed some of that. And I wonder if you can kind of chalk some of that up to being like really inexperienced, a new coaching staff, maybe, I don't know. Also maybe kind of just been like some games with flag happy officials kind of mixed in there. So they kind of are better with that recently, but because it's been so bad in the past, you can't just like say, okay, it's fixed and it's definitely not going to pop back up again.
I want to talk about the linebackers a little bit because I saw on Twitter, if you just search Eagles and linebackers on Twitter, it's just a bunch of angry people, very, very angry people. And you look at their PFF scores, if that matters to people, everyone's under 50. And so, you know, as a Lions fan, I look at that. I look at linebackers are bad. I look at the Lions have TJ Hawkinson and DeAndre Swift. That seems like a pretty good matchup for me. Is the Eagles linebacking core as bad as everyone seems to say? And is that a very favorable matchup for the Lions?
Yeah, it is. It is really bad. I mean, like in an admitted way too, like the Eagles don't have a couple linebackers that they just play, and they like, these are our guys. These are the good linebackers. Like, they play a bunch of different linebackers if you look at their snap counts, because they don't have good ones. So they're trying to like find the right combo, or trying to like, put them in situations where like, this guy, okay, maybe he's better in pass coverage, so we're going to play him on a pass. Like, they really try to rotate those guys, and they haven't been able to find anything that really works in a great way. So it's going to be an issue, and it's not shocking because the Eagles have invested like the least possible into linebacker, or they're, at least they're down there in the NFL when it comes to teams comparatively. So it's not a shock. Like, they don't have good players. Arguably, one of their best linebackers is this guy named Davion Taylor, who doesn't know how to play football. Like, didn't play football in high school, and because of so just like, that's one of their best, most exciting talents they have at linebacker. Everyone else is kind of just like, Eric Wilson used to play for the Vikings. He's nothing special. He's actually been really bad. His playing time has gone down. Alex Singleton used to be in the CFL, and he gets a lot of tackles, but these aren't like tackles in the backfield. It's like tackles like 10 yards down the field. So not really the most meaningful stat there. And yeah, it's a bad group, and I absolutely think that the Lions can have success exposing them.
Well, something else that it seems like the Eagles probably struggle to do a little bit, looking at some of their numbers, is just pressure the quarterback. It seems like a lot of their pressure comes from the interior. It's Fletcher Cox, it's Javon Hargrave, and it's kind of surprising to look at these numbers and see like a former first round pick like Derek Barnett not really, not really getting home. Josh Sweat seems like he's having even a better year than him, but like you see the defensive interior is where the pressure is coming from. It's not off the edges. It's not where it typically comes from. Is that scheme? Is that player? What is it?
I think it's a mix. I think Derek Barnett is just kind of like solid, nothing special. He's a former first round pick, but he's not that kind of a difference maker. He's just a guy, just a starting defensive end, anything special, flashy about it. Josh Sweat, I think, has had some positive moments. The interior, though, is where they've spent a lot of money. Fletcher Cox is their highest paid player. And again, I think you can say there have been times, there's a 3rd and 15 against the Raiders last week, where you would think maybe you would send your highest paid player to go rush the quarterback. But instead, for some reason, they had him like pop off onto a running back to like eliminate a check down on 3rd and 15. So not the best thing to see. So I think scheme can be an issue. But I also, again, Fletcher Cox has been in the NFL for a long time, since 2012. And he's not only has he been in the league for a long time, but like Brandon Graham, who entered the league in 2010, like has played like considerably fewer snaps than him, despite the fact that Fletcher Cox has, entered the league a couple of years later. So there's just so much wear and tear on Fletcher Cox's body. I don't think he's the same player he used to be, the same elite level player. So that's an issue. Javon Hargrave has been awesome, like all pro level, at least through his first 5 games here. He had 6 sacks in them. The past 2 weeks, he hasn't had a sack, and he's just had 1 quarterback hit. Now, he did force Derek Carr into an interception, like that doesn't show up on the box score, but he did kind of like knock him off his spot and pressure him. And Derek Carr threw a bad pass that got tipped, and Avonte Maddox, who's from Detroit, picked off. And so I think Javon Hargrave, like going up against the Lions backup center with Frank Ragnow out, could be a mismatch that should concern Detroit, because that's like one of the good things the Eagles have going for them. But he's been quieter in recent weeks, so I don't know if that is also related to the shoulder injury that he's dealing with, which caused him to miss practice on Wednesday, and he was limited today on Thursday.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because basically every Lions coach, when asked, what sticks out about this Eagles defense, it's the defensive front, right? And part of that, it feels like it's kind of a legacy thing. Like they've always had a really good defensive front. And when I look at some of the numbers, like pressure rate is like bottom 10, sack rate bottom 10. I think they only have 11 sacks in 7 games. Is the defensive front kind of a shell of its former self, or maybe is it just not showing up on the stat sheet?
Well, it was really disappointing last week against the Raiders, because the Raiders are missing like both of their starting guards, I believe. You have an overdrafted, many would say, not to Mike Mayock, but a lot of other people would say right tackle, and Alex Leatherwood. And like the Eagles couldn't take advantage of that. Like Derek Carr, 31 and 34. So I think part of it is that the soft defense, the Eagles play certainly isn't helping, because, okay, you're eliminating the big play, but when you're allowing quarterback to take what's underneath and get the ball out of his hands quickly, then that kind of negates what you can do from a pass rush perspective, because you're not making him hold on to the ball. So I think that's part of it too, is just kind of how it works with the coverage and everything.
I got two questions before we get to one of my bigger points of this whole thing. I just want to check in on two former players. I know one's not with you anymore. What happened to Travis Fulgham?
So my read on Travis Fulgham is that, like, not necessarily the most like motivated player, didn't necessarily like bring it all, that had talent, clearly, like has some natural ability, but didn't like necessarily give the maximum effort. And I mean, for him to fall, like, it's crazy. He led the NFL in receiving for like a 5-week stretch last season. It was insane. And then he lost playing time with the Eagles bringing Alshon Jeffrey back. And that was an insane decision, even if Travis Fulgham wasn't practicing hard, because like Alshon Jeffrey's literally not in the league anymore, and he's cooked and he's done. But he fell out of favor last season. And then the Eagles hired a new coaching staff, and he clearly fell out of favor with them too. Like, the Eagles weren't even using practice squad protections on them. Like, you can do that every week. And then they just cut him like a week or two ago. And now he's in Miami, which I don't know is the best place for a player with motivation issues. But yeah, I think it all kind of comes down to that with him.
And then can we have Darius Slay back?
Honestly, so in the offseason, caught a lot of heat for being like, the Eagles should trade Darius Slay. And it's not like, hey, I want to trade this player because I think they suck. Like, that's not the argument. The point is, like, I don't think the Eagles are in a spot where they need to have this big money cornerback contract on the books. Like, because Darius Slay is getting paid like an elite player. Sure. I think he's a very good cornerback. He really didn't really transform the Eagles defense at all last year. They actually got worse as a team in pass defense. That's not all his fault. But like, the point is, like, you're paying these premium resources in between the picks you're giving up and the contract. Like, it's just not worth it to me. So yeah, I would be willing to give him back, because I don't think he makes sense here as part of like the long-term future. But yeah, so
I was thinking more for just one game. He's probably not part of the Lions' long-term future at this point either.
Yeah.
Before we get into the one thing we think we know, I have to just bring up the fact that you have already submitted your picks for Week 8, and that includes the Lions over the Eagles. So give me a quick pitch on why you think the Lions are going to beat the Eagles this week.
I think the Lions are due. They're 0-7, but I feel like they can't be 0-8. Like, I mean, they can be, because they're the Lions. And
they have
it's
before.
Possible, but they've done it before. But I just feel like they're a better team than that. I feel like Dan Campbell and these players are hungry for a win. I can't tell you the Eagles have that same fight in them right now. I really can't. You're seeing players question the coaching staff, as opposed to like wanting to go out and give it all for the coaching staff. Deuce Staley revenge game to me is very much a real thing. The Eagles passed over for him, and they could have hired him as their head coach. Dave Phipp, who you mentioned is away from the team right now, could be a little bit of a revenge game for him too. Former Eagles special teams coordinator. And why would you give the Eagles the benefit of the doubt right now? Like, with the Eagles, what are you hanging your hat on? Like, what are you pointing to? Like, this is a good thing they have going for them. I think the best thing, the argument for the Eagles is like, the Lions have talent issues, clearly, as you know, and they're hurt. And, maybe Javon Hargrave steps up, has a big game. This defense has worked against like Sam Darnold, who is terrible, and it limited Jimmy G and Matt Ryan in week 1. So against lesser quarterbacks, it has worked. Like, that's the best I've got. I think the Lions are going to win this game. It's in Detroit. I feel it. And honestly, the Eagles deserve to lose this game. Like, they just so deserve it. They so deserve to lose this game, because they think they're so much better and so much better of a spot than they really are. I think it's best for the Eagles, actually, if they lose this game. I think it would be a big wake-up call.
Fair enough.
I was going to say, is there just something about the NFC East in terms of like seeing the Cowboys and like they're probably going to run away with the division, but it's just like, it's like the Cowboys, and then it's like all these other 2 and 5 teams that are just kind of like sitting at the table like, nah, we're better than you. Like, we should be sitting at the big table with the Cowboys. Like, is it just like this idea that like we're not really as bad as like people say we are? Like, we're much better than that.
I mean, I feel like the Eagles might think that, but again, incredibly just misguided to believe that. I mean, the reality is, since the beginning of the 2020 season, the only teams with fewer wins than the Eagles, I believe, are the Texans, the Lions. Hello, congrats. The Jets and the Giants. Like, this is the company. I think the Eagles think they're in the company of like these NFL elites, not this year, but like they think they're going to like come out on this with the other side clean, because they have these top picks. They have the Dolphins pick, which could be 1 overall, probably not, but maybe. And then they have the Colts first round pick, assuming Carson Wentz plays 75% of the snaps. So, which he's on track to do currently. So, like, you point to those things as hope for the future, but like no one has faith in Howie Roseman making the right picks. So, it's hard to feel good right now about this team. Not only right now, like, because I know like it's also the Lions are in a bad spot, but I'd almost trade positions right now because the Lions have like this vision, this future. The Lions at least have like this blank slate where you're like, okay, I can give this coach and this new GM like some time to figure it out. Like the Eagles don't have that because the GM is still here, and the GM who got them into this mess is the same guy who's supposed to get them out of it.
Well, that made me feel kind of good. Thanks for saying all that.
Thanks, Brandon.
Let's go to the one thing we think we know, where we make a prediction about the upcoming game. I bombed mine I went bold last week, and I completely bombed out. I said both backup quarterbacks would end up playing in Lions Rams, and that certainly did not happen. I don't remember do you remember what you picked, Ryan?
Yeah, I said that Cooper Kupp would hit the over on his longest completion, and he did.
Well done. Well, let's follow it up. Can you make it 2 in a row? What is the one thing you think you know about Lions Eagles?
Well, hold on. Can I make it 3 in a row? Because I did say Joe Burrow was going to have 3 touchdowns after I talked about a Lego analogy that has fallen apart. But here is what I think I know about Lions Eagles. Darius Slay, you want to talk about revenge games, Brandon? I think like this is a revenge game. And it would probably be even more so for Darius Slay if it was a different coaching staff, like say it was Matty P.
Oh, yeah. That's a good example.
But I think that Darius Slay gets 1 interception this game. I think that he picks off Jared Goff. Granted, he's probably going to have to play within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage to get that interception, but I think that he'll make that happen, and Darius Slay gets a pick.
All right, I'll move to you next, Brandon. What is the one thing you think you know about Lions Eagles?
Have you guys ever heard of or been to Captain Jay's, which Darius Slay cited this week?
I haven't. Apparently, it's a big chain. Like, there's a ton of them in Metro Detroit. But yeah, he mentioned that as the place he's going to go after the game, I think he said.
Interesting. Yeah, I want to visit there next time I'm visiting Mr. Reno here. So the one thing I think I know, so it's funny, like you brought this up and I was like thinking of making the Slay prediction, but it's kind of funny because Darius, or he hates when you call him Darius, of course. Slay said at the beginning or at one point in training camp that like he didn't really even care about this game as much from the standpoint of like the Patricia thing, like because Patricia's gone, it doesn't hold the same level of juice now. It holds more than none. Like I think he's looking forward to going back, and I'm sure he'd like to have a big player too. But I have to take, to me, I think it's crazy that this line is 3.5. Like the Lions are 3.5 underdogs. Like even if the Lions don't win this game, I think it's going to be a lock that they're going to cover. I think it's going to be a close game. So I love the points in this game, and it's crazy to me how that line hasn't shifted. That opened at 3.5, and I figured like a lot of people. Yeah, I'm shocked that people like aren't hammering that. Like I would hammer that, and like look, you even have Eagles fans at Ryan's rubbing his hands here. You have Eagles fans at Bleeding Green Nation. I do my weekly picks there, where we put a poll for each game, and 60% of Eagles fans at BGN are thinking the Lions will win this game. So, man, I really love that 3.5.
This is a tricky one for me in terms of just straight up picking it, because I do think there are matchups that are in the Lions' favor. I do think, and I don't put as much into this as a lot of people do, where, the team's hunger. Like, Lions have a bye week next week. Going in 0-8 would be horrible. They're coming off a really close matchup. They've got more fight in them. Like, I don't know how much I buy into all that, because I do think the Eagles are a much more talented roster. But I'm going to swing this one on the positive side this week. And I know you said the Eagles are good at stopping explosive plays. But with that linebacking core, I think this is the week the Lions finally get an explosive play in the running game. They have not been able to. I think their longest run on the season is 27. I think they get one beyond 30 in this week. DeAndre Swift is playing some of his best football in the receiving game. I think this week he breaks out at least one long one on the ground for once. This team needs explosive plays to move the ball. As we saw last week, like the Lions had all these trick plays and they resulted in 3 points. The only time they scored a touchdown was the very first drive of the game, and it was because of a 50-whatever-yard screenplay. They're going to get an explosive play on the ground game, and I don't know if that tends to a win or not, but it's going to help them out. Thoughts?
Go Lions, go.
All right, before we go, let's give Brandon the floor to promote his stuff, to tell us what we can find at Bleeding Green Nation. Maybe if there's stuff that we should listen to as well. Where can people find you and all the good, the Eagles goodness?
Yes, that's how I refer to it. That's how it's officially phrased. You can follow me on Twitter at Brandon Gouton. You can check out same handle, Instagram at Brandon Gouton. I check out bleedinggreennation.com, obviously for our full Eagles coverage. I talk about the Detroit Lions sometimes nationally, quote, on the SB Nation NFL show, which is always a good time that we have that feed there. I'm on Cameo, which is ridiculous and shouldn't be possible. But
what? You are on Cameo?
It's true. If you want to go to cameo.com/Brandon Lee Gouton, you can book me for a whopping $5. I will give you a personalized video message. I don't know why any of you listening to this would want that, but I'm on there, baby. I think those are all about the plugs I have, other than check out Pride of Detroit, obviously, which people here are for all the good Lions coverage, and Eagles fans who might be tuning into this, maybe. So yeah, all the good stuff.
All right. Awesome. Thanks for joining us, Brandon. Appreciate our talks, whether they're about Lions football or Eagles football or life in general. Appreciate you making some time for us. Appreciate you all for listening. We do have announcements coming in the next couple days because Movember is coming. The mustache is coming back. We're going to be doing a month-long charity drive, of which details will be released shortly. So make sure you're headed to prideofdetroit.com. We'll have it on our YouTube page, our Twitch page. We'll talk about it more on the podcast probably after the Eagles game on Sunday. So make sure you're tuned into all of those and follow us on all those platforms. But until next time, thanks for joining us. It's Chaos. Be kind.